Alrighty, we are back, I think. Oof. Alright, so I'm thinking either there's a heat thing or something going on with my computer on my end. Maybe there's a memory leak happening that's happening between the game and my setup. Could be a lot of things, but yeah, no, that's not it ain't running right, we shall say. It ain't running right. So we are gonna do what we're gonna do eventually. I was going to actually play games for a little bit longer, but I did want to do a review of Adam Mockler's Jubilee debate because I find stuff like that interesting. That's the other half of this is we play games and we talk some politics and analysis, and sometimes we do deep dives into literature and whatnot, stuff like that. Again, that's my background. It's what I do for a living. So I find it interesting. So let's take us a second here. I just want to make sure we get everything set up. I think we are set up and good to go. And let's just get this baby out. Get that over there. Pop you out. You should pop up. Hey, there he is. All right. So let's take a look. Sorry if you wanted to see some good old Monster Hunter, but it ain't working right now. So we'll try to power through this. We might not watch all of it, but we'll power through a good section here and see if we can provide some insight onto this. Either way, I've seen some of Adam Mockler's debates and whatnot. He seems to be a interesting young man. For the most part, I think he's got a decent head on his shoulder, and this should be, like most of these surrounded, kind of a bit of a shit shoot, and a bit of a shit show, certainly. But let's see.
My first claim is Trump is causing a rise of fascism in our generation. Damn.
Hey, Adam, I'm Scotty.
Nice to meet you, Scotty.
Hey, would you mind unpacking a little bit more what you mean by rise?
The rise of fascism, yeah. Over the past decade, we've seen a normalization of more fascist, anti-democratic ideologies. Just to explain.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing about debates like this is more often than not, I find it's important to define terms early on. So stuff like, can you define what fascism is? It is important to define terms. Anytime you want to do a discussion on something, defining terms is kind of it's the pre-debate before the debate. It is oftentimes very annoying because you can get into a lot of semantic crap and basically definitional bullshit, but you kind of need to get it through, because if you don't lay out a groundwork for terms, even if you don't agree on the terms, if you don't create the space for people to kind of tell you what they mean when they say X or Y or Z, you'll end up in an argument that can't really function. Because if two people are using the same word and meaning two different things, subtly or sometimes massively different things, then there's no real discussion. This, however, also doesn't solve it, because again, you would, to move on to the next level, you would have to agree to some definition of the term, and frequently, even if a definition of the term is supposedly reached, I find that most of these debates, the debaters will still stick with their one particular form of rather than using the agreed upon definition, they will fall back into their original partisan kind of biased definition. So even though it is useful for this, defining fascism, whatever it is, we're gonna... Sorry, I need to get some water here. We're gonna run into problems. Now, the other issue is that while it's important to define terms. It is also one of the most easy and the most lazy kind of debate tactics is to simply say that's not fascism. Is to, rather than to agree to a colloquial term, you use the fact that they will define it in one way or another, and then rather being a debate about the substantive thesis that is being presented forward, instead the interlocutor or both will simply quibble over the definition of, in this case, fascism, rather than if we could abandon the term fascism, or we could substitute in a more general term that is acceptable to both parties, then we could get into, okay, is Trump causing a rise of bad things, dictatorships, blah, 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 something else. So this is oftentimes, it is a necessary thing, but in the hands of people who don't want to argue, who don't actually want to discuss something, it is a very common bad faith tactic. But let's continue.
Trump's claim to fame entering U.S. politics. He was famous before this, but he entered U.S. politics by saying Obama wasn't born in America. He convinced a large swath of the country that Obama was not born in America. 4 years later.
So he did kind of originate that. I think Fox News and him both kind of were perpetuating this. I can't remember. I'm not sure if it originally started with Trump or if somebody else had brought this up. Like this had been brought up by like some, basically like a Tucker Carlson kind of figure, or some kind of like a Joe Rogan or some other podcaster slash journalist slash propagandistic, dickhead on the right. But somebody had brought it up, I think, and pretty early on, Donald Trump, as he says, his kind of entry into this was at the very least popularizing and propagating this on a pretty large scale. There were others who were aiding him in propagating this, but this was one of his big ones, is a absolute 100% complete fabricated bullshit lie about Obama's birthplace. So yeah, he would be very much correct on that.
He was chanting "lock her up" at a political rally, and no presidential candidate had done that before. 4 years after that, he had couped the government, or at least attempted to coup the government. And now, I live in the city of Chicago. He's posted AI memes of Chicago being invaded. He sent the military into Chicago. So over the past, you could say decade and a half, we've seen a normalization of fascism.
So here's a problem I also have with a lot of you young conservatives and young people in general, even though I kind of get it. Because everyone's young once, and when you're young, you're stupid and irreverent. But the irony poisoning of the youth to such a degree to where they are like thumbs upping goofy shit like that, even though they know it's not necessarily good. Like they agree with like a vague policy around it, but the actual actions, they're like, okay, yeah, obviously it's not that great, and this is kind of antagonistic. Again, there's a weird nihilistic and antisocial nature to the irony poisoned, Groyper adjacent new MAGA youth, and it is not great. I was mostly commenting because you had this chuckle fuck in the background, giving thumbs up and really happy about the idea of, again, Chicago being invaded by, again, the National Guard. Like, none of this was necessary. It didn't help anything. All it did was smear shit and kind of upset the, trigger the libs, which that's like 85% of the politics of MAGA is just harm. It really is just, I will always go back to this, one of the earlier supporters of Donald Trump. She gets upset because Donald Trump is cutting funding to some program she needs or whatever, healthcare or something like that. And she gets upset and she says, he's not hurting the right people. I voted for him and he's not hurting the right people. And that kind of tells you a lot about the politics of MAGA.
in America. And I think it's manifesting in our generation in unique ways. We could talk about the Politico story, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I would say let's talk a little bit more about what fascism actually is, because
So here's an interesting thing is this is not responsive to what Mockler just said. Again, Mockler just said we could talk about the Politico story, we could talk about blah, blah, blah. We could talk about these things and discuss them and whether or not they are fascism, but or to discuss them in the context of this. And but like he wants to go into the definition of fascism, which probably is going to be some very basic thing. But let's give him a chance.
I think fascism is a loaded term.
What's your definition?
And when
I hear it.
before
A loaded term. So his problem is with responsibility of the term and the effect of it, and less so with accuracy. That's what that's what immediately tells me. You may agree or disagree with this, but right now that's what I would say is the big thing. That's you again, this is very nitpicky of me. But hey, I'm a literature professor. That's what I do, is I nitpick on language. The immediate kind of switching here of topics, the immediate movement, and that kind of telltale, it's a loaded term. I don't, again, you're loading in more. Now we could maybe say like, okay, this is a loaded term in that it throws too much shade at us. It implies too much harm. It could be a path of something we would say it's acceptable. But I am doubtful that we're going to have a reasonable ask here. But let's see.
I get there, what I would say, when you attach fascism to Trump's name, that is a slap in the face to all the Jews who were exterminated under fascist law.
Okay, that was a direction I hadn't seen this. I haven't seen this. So this first viewing, that's a fucking leap. So the use of fascism is a slap in the face of all the Jews who died under fascism. That's an interesting tactic. It's nonsensical because one, there were fascist regimes that didn't necessarily actively persecute the Jews. I mean, I think Italy is like the standard of fascism, like literal fascism, whereas again the Nazi Germany was fascistic to a large degree and certainly had lots of that. But I think technically, if you're very technical, it's more Mussolini's Italy that was the model and the kind of the archetype of fascistic government, at least in the modern sense. Modern being, 1930s and 40s. But again, using the fact that, oh, well, if you can't be fascistic unless you've killed or genocide or attempting to kill and genocide mass groups of people. This is this kind of weird bait and switch. It's trying to use a moral attachment to a specific historical context of a word to deny the word's applicability and to kind of make it so like, okay, well, as long as he doesn't, it's kind of like, okay, well, you can't call him a dictator because you can't call Maduro a dictator, or you can't call Saddam Hussein a dictator because they didn't actively kill millions of Jews. That was like Stalin, and that was Hitler, and all those. You can't use those. You can't call this person evil. So yeah, they murdered and ate 16 babies, but this other guy murdered and killed thousands of people. So you can't, like, if he's the definition of evil, we can't. It's an insult to all the victims of that evil to call this guy who only ate 3 babies evil. So we seeing the stupidity here? Okay, so let's go on here.
Slap in the face to all the Jews who were exterminated.
I would also, this is going to be somewhat unfair, but the majority of violence that has been directed at Jewish individuals throughout most modern era, and I'm going back to even ancient era, where we'll go back to like the 1500s, 1200s onwards to now. As far as total body count, as far as what has been the worst things to happen to the Jewish population, Hitler is going to be probably at the top, again 6 million. That's a pretty, it's a genocidal act. But battling for like second, third, fourth, pretty damn close to him, is going to be Christianity, because honestly, the Nazis only stand out in history as far as Jewish suffering and persecution. If you ignore part one for the number, it was quite high, pretty extensive. But mostly it's because it's just it was kind of surprising that it wasn't an explicitly Christian and or Catholic and or Islamic purging of them, because usually that's where it is coming from. It's like, you're reading a newspaper and the Jews are being persecuted horribly, and there's mass killings and enslavement and terror being done to them, and you're like, well, is it the Christians, or is it Christianity or Islam? Neither, kind of. It's actually Germany and German government. Huh. Oh, wow. So and this is important because, again, these are all conservative MAGA youth, and they are almost ubiquitously highly Christian or very, very Christian associated, oftentimes very Christian nationalist. In fact, I know a few of them in there. I've seen them in previous Jubilees. They are pretty much Christian fascists, almost Christian theocracy kind of individuals. They absolutely believe that America is a Christian nation, and they say, oh, well, we're not going to use this to persecute or anything like that, but it's not, I'm sorry, that doesn't really fly with me. History and their behavior has not proven this to be true. So again, even in modern times, the majority of anti-Semitism that is happening over the past 20, 30, 40 years, I think even the ADL, you could check the ADL's kind of discussion on this, even though they're somewhat biased, but you could check the various international and local, national kind of advocacy groups that track hate crimes or whatever. A lot of it outside of the recent Palestinian conflict, which has inflamed to a certain degree parties that normally don't act out this behavior. A lot of anti-Semitism and persecution of Jews tends to come from more conservative cultural elements. So whether it's through religious or political conservatism, usually along lines of Christianity and or Islam, that tends to be there aren't a lot of atheists who are harassing and or burning down and talking about Jewish conspiracies theory and stuff like that. There's a fair bit of Christian stuff. So again, for someone to be talking about, the persecution of the Jews as a defense, like, look, your party is probably home to some of the most anti-Semitic political figures in America. So kind of pot and kettle at best. It feels disingenuous.
Under fascist law.
Fascism doesn't
Hitler.
just have to do with Jews. Donald Trump is absolutely...
it was Hitler. When you think of fascism, you think of two people. You think of Hitler and you think of Mussolini, who killed millions and millions of people.
Yeah, if you're an uneducated person. Again, what's interesting about the youth, I know I'm talking a lot bit here, is especially when it comes to those who are very opinionated and constantly a lot of conservatism, is that they talk in stories and narratives and kind of these large scale meta narrative ideals or concepts, which honestly is a massive indicator of propaganda, because propaganda never deals with details, it never deals with nuance, it doesn't want to deal in those any kind of real specifics. It will sometimes, but only in service of some kind of easy to digest thing. Fascism is only Hitler and Mussolini. And if Donald Trump is not Hitler or Mussolini, he's not fascist. Calling him that is unfair and trying to besmirch his name. And that's why it's inaccurate. It's kind of almost like really kindergarten level logic, but that is the logic. And it's easy. That's why it's super effective. It's easy to remember, it's easy to work with, and it's intuitively works. Oh, fascism. You remember fascism? Yeah, it was like Hitler and whatever. These guys are trying to call this guy fascist. Well, it's like, well, I mean, like, he's not like a Nazi party person or something, or like the Mussolini fascist party of Italy. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Trump is not that.
What's your definition of fascism?
I would say
wanna hear it.
fascism is a one person or one party who is silencing and who is demeaning and who is, I guess you would say, opposing and silencing any other opposition.
It's
That's not even close. So, silencing, demeaning. So, part of the reason why he thinks that's fascistic is he probably thinks the left is fascistic for cancel culture. That's probably where they've got it to. Because that's often the response is that, oh no, we're not fascists. It's the left who's fascist because they're the ones who are trying to control everything. At best, that would be maybe some kind of authoritarianism or dictatorship to some degree, which, again, authoritarianism is a part of fascism. Again, these things have shared characteristics. It's kind of like, if you were to think of it as like species, is that a cat is a mammal and a dog is a mammal, but cats and dogs are not necessarily the same, but they do also share something. So if I were to call somebody a cat, you can't just say, well, it's not a cat. It can't possibly be a cat because a cat is XYZ. It's just like, well, no. It's a feline. It's a cat. The tiger is a cat. It is of the feline thing. And then they're like, well, hello, look at this. This is a house cat right here. And you're trying to tell me that this tiger is the same? Well, no, I'm not saying it's the same. I'm saying it is the same in one level of analysis. Because it has these characteristics of, it is of the feline, or the felinus, or whatever the hell you would call it in the actual Latin. It is of the feline, like genus, species. So that, again, his definition actually did not define anything. It defined an act that something might do, which can be helpful, but not particularly.
kind of right.
I know
I'd
it's
say
more nuanced to that.
I'd say a better definition is a far-right authoritarian ideology with one leader at the top with a cult of personality who forcibly suppresses opposition, as you said, but at the same time, he erodes democratic norms and there's hyper-militarization involved, military in the streets. Do you disagree with any of that?
I agree with you that Trump did send in the National Guard
which one of those,
to Chicago.
Which one of those descriptions does not describe Trump? All of those terms.
I would say that Trump, I guess you say, what are his motives behind doing these certain things, right? Because you're asking me.
So again, this is the mind reader. This is the might makes right aspect of a lot of right-wing kind of politics, is that they don't necessarily have standards and they don't have principles. What they have is goals. And as long as you reach a goal, it doesn't really matter, the ends justify the means. There's a lot of that here, which is why you could see in that kind of language there is that he knows that what Adam Mockler just described is a somewhat ad hoc and a bit kind of generalist kind of description of a fascistic style dictator. And fascism tends to be very, again, dictatorship, authoritarian, very unfair in the sense of it does not give voice to other oppositional parties. It does not give the ability for there to be some kind of democratic people's voices are heard of equal merit. Lots of issues with this. Um, Again, the kid here can't really say that this does not describe Trump. This is a good move by Mockler, is that all this does describe Trump and Trump's actions. He knows that this is absolutely describing Trump's actions because Trump has taken these actions. But instead, it's motive. It is, you know, you judge yourself by motives and others by their actions. That kind of narcissistic kind of problem of analysis is that you assume ill intent when your enemies or people you don't necessarily like do something, and you assume good intent when you or somebody you like does something, even if the result is objectively bad and or harmful, and you know it is objectively bad and harmful. You assume best intentions because, again, this is about kind of a loyalty thing, and it's not necessarily about it's 100% partisan party politics, red team, blue team.
I guess when you say, what are his motives behind doing
Wait,
these
no,
certain
no.
things,
I
right?
gave
Because
you a
you're asking me.
I gave
No,
you
no,
a
no, no. You're
definition of-
saying these things.
No, 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 no. You were
Yes.
pressing me on the definition of fascism.
Okay.
So I gave you a few qualities. Which of those qualities does not describe
Okay,
Trump?
say those qualities one more time.
It is a far-right authoritarian ideology with one leader at the top who is a cult of
Okay.
personality. He forcibly suppresses opposition. They like hyper-militarization
Okay, so
and
forcibly,
eroding.
I disagree with forcibly doing that. Give me an example right now about forcibly.
You know, a really
doing
good
that.
example is lately Jimmy Kimmel was taken off air by the FCC
Okay,
because
see,
the FCC.
I knew we were gonna go here with Jimmy Kimmel.
Wait, listen, no.
That's not.
Did you hear? You know who the FCC commissioner is?
Yes. Okay.
Who is it?
No, I actually don't know exactly who this is, but I know what
It is Brendan
okay.
Carr. So if you don't know who it is, then you might not know that Brendan Carr said in an interview, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. It was essentially
Okay.
a mobster threat. Other than that, Donald Trump has attacked law firms. He has attacked universities. Jimmy Kimmel might not be the best example because he's a late night show host, but it is a glaring example.
I get it.
Yeah.
Right. I would disagree with you. And what do you mean by like forcibly, right? Because you're attaching fascism to Trump.
So here's the next thing is that there's also, because most people's information about history, if they aren't actually studying history, reading up on it, going to universities and getting good, well tested, well researched, well cited historical knowledge, most of it comes from kind of movies or whatever. And they always imagine that, oh, well, the fascistic purges or the fascistic stuff where they were suppressing other voices, this always came with boots and batons and beatdowns and massive arrests and shootings and killings and assassinations. They always think very, very violently, when a good number of times it wasn't explicitly violent. It oftentimes got more violent, and again, the more fascistic and the more dictators and more control they had, oftentimes the greater the violence. But oftentimes, especially early on, and like the first response was always like very strong political, social threats, economic threats that would silence newspapers, and they would just get like shut down. Again, they would get shut down. They get removed. Again, orders would be put out. They would be not allowed to broadcast or publish. And then only if they continued to try to publish or they pushed a little harder, then the party police would arrive and, kind of break the printing presses, kick people out of the their like printing store, the newspaper building, whatever it is. So this idea that fascism or that these kind of harms, it's only harmful when they beat you, is kind of the implication. It's like, no. Wait, you can absolutely, using political, social, and cultural pressures, and using the power of the government, the threat of legal repercussions, of loss of privileges, of rights. Again, you can do this easy way or hard way. If you want to choose the hard way, we can take your broadcasting license away entirely, so then nothing can be broadcast. You get no deals. You get no incentives. You get nothing back. Now all of a sudden you lose millions, hundreds of millions of dollars very rapidly. So again, this is a huge problem with a lot, is that these types, a lot of people on the conservative side, because again, most of their news is in the form of entertainment, whether it be literal movies or even Fox News, whatever. They all speak in hyperbole. They speak in extreme levels of narrative and kind of again that the just a kind of narrative story conspiratorial wording that they can't imagine that you can be oppressed by a letter being sent to you. And you might say, well, hold on, that's not going to stop me. And so, like, yeah, it would. If you received a cease and desist letter from the federal government that threatens to, hey, you will lose access to your driver's license, you will lose access. We will just, again, we don't have to beat you. You rely on so much of the government, like also now, oh no, your license is now revoked. Your right to own guns is revoked, all this stuff. So now you are living in constant illegality if you do not basically self-impose the material suppression. So that's something that people miss, is that a lot of the suppression that happens in fascistic style governments and dictatorships is often one self-imposed through the fear. The fear of the response is enough to get people to do it. And again, that's why it is unjust. That's why it's problematic. You don't need boots on the ground. You just need people to know that this can happen. Or even sometimes, not even just boots on the ground, just literal, oh, well, no, you're persona non grata. This goes back to even ancient times when all of a sudden you would get the scarlet letter written on your head. You would get the mark of being a bad person, and now all of a sudden you're exiled from your village. You are no longer a person to that village. You cannot be serviced. The local preacher has said that you are a demon. You might say, well, oh, I don't need them. You do. You can't grow all your food. You can't do this. Even back in ancient times, you're going to have to rely on the village blacksmith for fixing stuff. You're going to have to rely on the village uh, uh, grocers and whatnot. You will have to do this. And again, the threat of this, I don't need to kill you actively. I don't need to physically do anything to you because you already are kind of at risk if I take this away from you.
Right? When we attach fascism, we attach that to Hitler and Mussolini. Jimmy Kimmel, him taking Jimmy Kimmel, he didn't have anything direct to do with taking Jimmy Kimmel off of air. The reason why Jimmy Kimmel got taken off of air is because nobody likes Jimmy Kimmel.
Again, that's not really true. Jimmy Kimmel's ratings were fine. And again, this whole nobody likes him, again, that's not even that important. Almost nothing would indicate that, what was it, CBS, I think it was? CBS had any plans on taking Jimmy Kimmel off the air prior to this. So even if he wasn't that popular, CBS didn't seem to give two shits. They were going to keep him on for whatever reasons. Maybe he was popular enough for them to warrant the time slot. It was fine. Him getting taken off the air only comes about from this.
I've maybe laughed
let's talk
3
about
or
the
4
word
times at
forcibly.
Jimmy Kimmel. He's not that funny.
Let's talk about the word forcibly then. Forcibly.
Okay.
And again, he's not that funny. Again, none of this matters. Again, this is all just kind of personal, kind of, it's only bad when it happens to something I like. Again, this is the other thing that I noticed with a lot of the youth is that, and this is just kind of a young person thing, is that it is very narcissistic. And it's not necessarily the youth, it's a kind of a generational thing now to where whether you're 20 years old, 40 years old, 60 years old, a lot of the conservative and a fair amount of the left, a good amount of the progressive and Democrat and left, whatever, don't have principles. They have privileges. They have things that they like, and they privilege those things. And if it's a thing they don't like, they don't apply a principle. Like, oh, people should be allowed to, speak their mind, except for the people who say stuff I don't like. Those people can be silenced. And that's because they're not saying good things. It now becomes a quality thing they rather than just a principle at its core that applies to all. It is now subjective.
It doesn't mean through violence. It could be using the state, using the government or your position of power to try to suppress the opposition. Donald Trump has spent his entire political career acting like the Democratic Party shouldn't exist. You know Act Blue, the fundraising
Biden
PAC?
and Obama have done the same things. What
How
are you
so?
talking about?
Okay.
It's not about forcibly.
Let me
It's
ask you.
What has Trump done to forcibly remove the opposition?
Okay.
He's spoken against the press. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Every president has done that of all time. They've spoken against the opposition.
Actually, that's not really that true. They haven't especially not to the extent he has, but not all presidents have spoken against the press or said that the press is bad or evil. Sometimes their spokespeople can be critical of the press and certain press coverage, but even then, that is oftentimes very limited. Obama wasn't that big on it. In fact, the only ones who specifically do this, the only reason why they think everyone has done it is because every one of their candidates has done it. Almost every single conservative presidential candidate and or president in the past 100 years has been very increasingly, with every single one, incredibly vocally anti-press. Mostly because they do shit that is illegal and bad. This is the kind of thing is that all presidents do this. It's like, no. Your presidents, conservative presidents, do this a lot. The Democratic, the more liberal ones, not nearly to the extent. You might be technically correct in that every president has at least once criticized or had his cabinet criticize coverage, news coverage. But if you were to think of, okay, well, we're not just going to use like you did it one time in 8 years. Is there any consistent pattern of this? Like a lot, like it's multiple times every single year, heavy criticism and negativity towards the press. When you hold that standard, all of a sudden, oh, well, yeah, it's conservatives. And Trump is the worst of the worst when it comes to this.
Opposition press. But that doesn't mean he's forcibly removed somebody from that position.
Last month, Donald Trump sent out a Truth Social post towards Pam Bondi. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
He said, Pam, I want you to indict.
Per BBC News, in a Truth Social post dated September 20th, 2025, which he intended as a direct message, so he accidentally put this, it was supposed to be just a DM and not an actual post. Trump urged then Attorney General Pam Bondi to take action against Letitia James and James Comey. He wrote, "Nothing is being done. What about Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, Letitia?" So he's specifically directing his Attorney General to take action against Letitia James and political opponents and or people who have crossed him. So this is a pretty interesting thing because for the most part, the Attorney General is not really supposed to follow the Attorney General doesn't bring charges against people just because or start investigations of people just because the president says so. The president, I think at best can suggest certain policy can suggest certain things that like I want to be harder on drug fraud or stuff like that. But specifically directing them is a little bit kind of, you have to be careful with it traditionally. And specifically just calling out, again, people like Comey, Schiff, and Letitia. Like Schiff hasn't done anything. Letitia hasn't done anything. Comey hasn't done anything. These people have no active kind of involvement in things that are illegal. So why are you telling them to go after them?
These three people and move fast. What happened is Eric Siebert, the federal prosecutor from the Eastern District of Virginia, then was forced to resign, forcibly resign, not through.
They're guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. We can't delay any longer. It's it's killing our reputation and credibility. So again, these people are killing reputation and credibility, and Trump wants them gone. Justice must be served now. Eric Siebert was later pressured to resign after refusing to indict Letitia James because, again, he, even if directed, again, there's nothing to prosecute her for, so he didn't, and he was pressured to resign.
Violence, but through pressure. Then you see 2 of the 3 people that Donald Trump named indicted for random stuff. You have Letitia James, and then you have James Comey, who got indicted. We also just saw John Bolton indicted. Can I ask you, is indicting your political...
So again, these indictments, I believe most of them have resolved and kind of been dismissed. I'm not sure if the Comey one and the Letitia one are still going. I think they are basically on their way out. If they aren't gone now, they are on their way out because there's just nothing to them. The Letitia James thing, I think, was a weird domicile tax thing. Like they were trying to claim that she was trying to claim 2 different domiciles and try to use them as a tax credit or whatever, but it's very obvious because she always, the filing is there that she was renting like one of these things to a family friend and she wasn't actually claiming it. There's some stupid, again, kind of rental tax law thing that's, she did all the correct steps and the paperwork's all there. It's just, if you don't look at the paperwork, you might, if you're stupid and looking for something to hammer somebody on, you might go, oh wait, hold on, she's trying to claim two different locations, 2 different places of residence, which again wasn't happening. But when you're that biased, everything looks, when all you have is a hammer and you want to hammer something, everything's a nail.
opponents for speaking up against
They
you.
did the exact
Who's
same
they?
things to Trump.
Who's they?
The left.
No, they did not. Again, Trump, pre his presidency, is notorious for, one, he's one of the most sued men in America because, and he's one of the most successfully sued men in America, if you include settlements as a degree of success, because he has oftentimes broken many different laws, tax laws, refusal of payments. The guy is absolutely a scumbag when it comes to this. There's just no doubt about it. So the idea that, again, the left or whatever would need to create nonsensical charges to go after Donald Trump, they don't have to. The guy's got so much dirt on him that you could literally file cases against him till the end of time. And they all have some degree of merit to them. And they aren't and they weren't technically politically motivated. They're just, he's breaking the law.
Party, the Democratic Party has
A
done the same
grand
thing.
jury in New York?
They tried to
grand jury in New York? Who's they?
See, now we're getting into those jury things where they used political power to go after
Did
Trump
Biden
because
ever
they
tweet-
were afraid of him. They were afraid of what he was going to do to America.
And again, the big thing is the political power. What political power? Again, there's too many bodies involved, and there's just not enough direct action. It's not like the Democrats were saying, we really need to get Trump on something. This guy is absolutely destroying America. We need to do that. And then, like a week later, charges are filed against him in some separate state for fraud or something like that. That's not really what's happening. It was more like there's an investigation, and due to him being president and then former president, and a lot of scrutiny coming into his tax records and his behaviors, there's like, wow, okay, well, there's a crime right there. We just saw a crime. Well, okay, well, let's prosecute crime. We prosecute criminals. He's done a crime. Let's do this. And I do believe with a lot of those fraud things recently, he was convicted. He was found guilty. People forget about that.
Did Biden ever
Right.
tweet at his attorney general and say, hey, Merrick Garland, can you indict
No, because
these 3
Biden
people?
wasn't even in charge of the presidency.
Okay, so Biden
he was not
wasn't
even making
weaponizing
those
the government.
things.
Pause. Sorry, you've been eliminated by the majority.
So there's another conspiracy there is, Biden wasn't even in charge. So then why blame Biden for anything? Like they spent years blaming Biden as terrible. Now the thing is, no, Biden was just a zombie and an auto pen. Again, the conspiracy theories just run into each other contradictorily. They rewrite their own history. They rewrite their own justifications for it. Nonsense.
Adam, that was so much
That was
fun.
great.
Nice
I
to
love
meet you,
that.
man.
It was great to meet you.
He needs to stop doing so much coke. That's what I would recommend to you, young man. Is stop doing that coke or speed or whatever the hell you're doing. Just take a breath. Just a little breath.
Got it.
Hi, Sadie.
Sadie, nice to meet you. I'm Adam.
So I want to touch on your forcible suppression of the opposition as defining fascism. So in my understanding, I think that the leftist party is assassinating conservatives. So we're talking.
All right. I'm curious how and what evidence she has of any leftist political party, unless, again, she's just thinking about like cultural leftism, which in that case, that's ridiculous and stupid, but I'm pretty sure there's no leftist calls for like political calls for violence that have resulted in that specific violence being done. I'm pretty sure, but let's see.
In my understanding, I think that the leftist party is assassinating conservatives. So we're talking about Charlie Kirk's assassination.
So again, assassinating conservatives. One, that's it's different than, again, political and, again, fascistic thing. You can have cultural and, again, domestic terrorism, which maybe you could call it that. You can have stochastic terrorism. You could have this kind of aspect. That has nothing to do with Donald Trump causing the rise of fascism. And again, that may very well be an indicator. So even if we were to take her thing as true, is that leftist parties, political and cultural elements are becoming more violent. Well, one of the results that happens with a rise of fascism is an increasing tension and violence of both sides. It's just the fascistic one is usually the antagonistic, and the other ones tend to be responsive. But again, the responsive ones also tend to do things that are, again, morally reprehensible. Like, I have no doubt you could look into the history of the rise of fascism in Italy and in Germany and other places of dictatorships, and you will find that there is oftentimes terroristic acts that were done against the fascistic government in response to their fascism. So you could see, oh, evil, terrible things happening. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, again, was not really an assassination. It was more of a lone gunman situation, because it is a lone gunman, because that's a cultural thing, is that you have a culturally confused, angry person who's mostly on the right, who might have only just began to socially move over towards the left because of personal relations, but who's mostly just mentally unstable and probably a whole host of other issues. And it's just like, okay, so if that's the case, then is any of the violence that has been done the opposite way, or are we gonna take account for that? Are we going to take account for, okay, so that's the left killing them. Okay, well, about what is it, Melissa Hortman and her husband and the other two? These were actual political assassinations, not just political pundits, but these were politicians who were assassinated in what is it, Wisconsin? Can't remember where they're from. But yeah, we do you notice those guys? Why don't we talk about those? We only talk about Charlie Kirk, and quite frankly, again, I just don't care.
We're writing, engraving on the bullets, "Catch fascist." I think that shows
Can you
more of a
define
fascism
leftist?
over here.
Can you define what you mean by leftist party? Because I
Sure.
think that conservatives are very good at individual responsibility. And when you're placing the blame on an entire party because one 22-year-old dude killed somebody, which is obviously tragic, then what do you mean by leftist party?
Yeah, so we have Kamala Harris calling Trump supporters fascist, Biden calling Trump supporters fascist. When you have these big leaders calling individuals fascist, and then that is getting tagged on to conservatives as a whole. So I think that the leftist party is actually very good about saying one thing about one person, and then this is getting spread to everyone. So back to what I'm saying about Charlie Kirk. So when Charlie Kirk got
What? Isn't she doing the same with the leftists? Hold on. I feel like I had brain worms for a second on that one. So calling them fascistic is what's leading to the violence of leftists against conservatives. So conservatives are under threat because leftists are calling them fascists, and that's leading to violence against them. Well, does that mean that all conservatives are responsible for all the violence that's happened to any progressives and or liberals over the past 20 years after they've called them terrorists and communists and baby killers and every other thing under the sun? Because that's okay. I mean, if you want to hold that standard, I'm not necessarily opposed to that standard. It's kind of a naive standard, but I'm not opposed to the morality of that, but you would have to hold it consistently. It would have to be not a privilege, but a principle.
Fascinated saying catch fascist. I think that's a very good example of fascism. And then you want to talk about the
Can I ask you, is your position that people in...
I don't know how that's fascism, though. Writing fascist and having violence against that, I don't see how that's fascistic. That's just, at best, political violence. But that's one thing that fascists do. Many different types of political ideologies commit political violence. That doesn't mean that they are all equivalent to each other.
power should not be calling the opposition party fascists or Gestapo or Hitler. Donald Trump called Kamala Harris and Joe Biden a fascist a dozen times throughout the campaign trail. He called them Gestapo, and only one politician has called Donald Trump Hitler, and it's J.D. Vance, his vice president.
And which party has that stuck?
And that's all very true. Again, and he's also called them communists. And J.D. Vance privately messaged his roommate in 2016 referring to Trump as American Hitler. Many other politicians have compared Trump to Hitler without directly stating he's Hitler, including Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz. This feels like a bit of... This isn't really necessarily a good fact check. But yeah, again, like they've made... There's been comparisons made, but that's the problem, is that, again, if the boot fits, after a while you call it a boot. It's just what it is. And again, the amount of violent rhetoric and dehumanizing rhetoric that, again, Donald Trump and his party and MAGA has been spewing for the past about 10 years is orders of magnitude greater. Like, you watch CNN, you watch ABC, you watch the news, and try to get like a temperature as far as the rhetoric used when describing Democrats and Republicans. You might find like a small bias of positivity towards Democrats, absolutely, and maybe a small negative, but the negative is just kind of, it's like small beans. It's negative, but not very great. Not much. You might find a pundit here or there who's talking about specific actions. Maybe, but for the most part, nothing. Like, it's not really terrible. It's biased, if you want to say that. But you don't walk away with Conservative Party as baby-eating monsters. You just walk away as they're kind of dumb, ineffective. They're not very good. They're making things a little crappy. You watch Fox News, and the Democratic Party are straight up communist, fascistic, boot-stomping, baby-eating murderers of the worst sort, and if you do not, they are literally demons. If you do not fight them with everything you have, they will literally destroy the earth, and Jesus will cry. You know, it is not that far off. So this idea that, oh, the rhetoric, again, is too heated and they're saying all these things, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. It's just I'm not buying it. I don't buy this. It feels a little odd to me, I'll be honest.
That stuck to conservatives. fascism has stuck to conservative.
That's because you keep doing it. It's stuck to conservatives. I'm sorry, you guys call leftist commies or whatever. That's because fascism is a far-right ideology. So when you are the conservative right party, farther right party, even if you aren't, like, yeah, leftists are always going to deal with the commie thing because communism, socialism typically is associated with left-wing politics. That's a cross to bear. Congratulations. But part of the reason why the fascistic label keeps being laid at Donald Trump and his ilk is because they keep doing fascistic things.
Consistently, you have all this violence on college campuses saying that they're calling Turning Point Target Practice USA.
That's messed
posting
up.
Photos of us with red X's on
That's
our
not
face,
okay.
with dots on our neck. So how are you to
Who's
say?
they though? Like random unhinged people?
So, and again, they again, that's the big thing is who is they? They're always very, very aware, and this is again the real problem of the kind of media ecosystem for conservatives is that I don't necessarily blame them for being histrionic about leftists trying to go after them or whatever and this kind of craziness, despite the fact that, again, the violence against conservatives is considerably less than it is against left-leaning individuals. But the thing that I almost don't blame them because, again, like I said just a little bit ago, if you watch Fox News and you listen to conservative media, stuff like, again, Alex Jones isn't on anymore, I don't think, but stuff like that, or Tucker Carlson, or you listen to these things, you would honestly, if you didn't know that they were propagandistic and you're just listening because, hey, this is a intelligent individual, they're on the TV, they probably are telling me the true news or something like that or something close, you would honestly think that there was just fires and brimstone and roving gangs of purple-haired feminists cutting balls off of men. There's massive gangs of these inner city hoodlums just burning down entire cities, mass killings, thousands of lives lost. You would think that entire swaths of good, wholesome Christian communities are being burned at the cross. You would genuinely think that there is nothing but endless terror. And again, social media does not help this because social media, again, you watch things, it will show you things that you will want to watch. And people's desires to watch, there's two things. It is either something that is validating, so something that validates your emotional response, or, well, actually, they're both validating now I think about it, but positive validation and negative validation. Again, if you're somebody who is very far right and you watch people like Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson, they're going to show you endless amounts of that kind of stuff and all the far right talking heads and podcasters. But you know what it'll also probably show you occasionally? It'll show you specifically the videos those podcasters post out that are in response to like people like Hassan or Destiny or any kind of left kind of figures. It'll show you that because you need fuel for the fire. The propagandistics aspect, the positive, that's helping support the fire, whatever. But nothing will entice people more than hate watching. In many ways, this is what Jubilee thrives off of, is they thrive off of people who are on one side or the other. So usually the side of the speaker who wants to watch them, and mostly they're not even watching for like Mockler here. They're watching for anger against this. And I can even see it in my own viewing right now. My own behavior is that I'm mostly responding to anger, to my irritation at the conservative thing. I am, again, trying to be fair and talking about both points of view, and I will critique Mockler when I see something that is egregious. But this is kind of what this political atmosphere feeds off of, is purely positive and negative reinforcement of a biased opinion. So again, this lady is in just absolutely filled with nothing but fear and anger and irritation at something that is not happening. Oh, they're posting these memes. I have no doubt it's the internet. 4chan has existed for as long as the internet has existed in many ways, or the kind of trolling thing. Of course, people are going to post up tasteless jokes and meanness about Charlie Kirk, especially people because they know it'll affect you. Again, trolls is one of the things, the old school rule is don't feed the trolls. Don't feed them negative attention or positive attention. Don't feed them anything because trolls thrive off of that. If you get upset and angry about something a troll posted, that troll is now incentivized to post more of that. More and more and more of that. Because they know they got engagement from you because of this. You know, it's a soft spot. It's a weak point. And again, she is very well aware of the anti-conservative cruelty online. What she is not aware of at all and has no care for is the anti-left, anti-progressive, anti-democrat rhetoric that is all over. And I will say this is not a two sides thing. I'm sorry, it simply isn't. There is sure a minority of progressive left things that will post up those kind of things and have that violent rhetoric and blah, 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 blah. But it's not nearly like you will have guys in suits on Fox News in a round table, very nice, very polite, professional setting, very, you know, politically correct. We're all going to talk in our nice voices here, and we're going to speak reasonably about the issues at hand. And if you're on Fox News, they will say the most out-of-pocket fucking nuts shit. They will straight up say, like, yeah, I think, honestly, we need to take the vote away from women. I just think, you know, these women, these feminists, these goddamn bra-burning, stupid whores, really just, we gave them the vote, and it's gone against God's basic decree that man is the ruler and woman serves. And, you know, if we gotta get boots on the ground and force these hoes back in the kitchen, we got to. Like, they talk insane. I urge you, if you are somewhat conservative and you're like, hold on, that's not true. That's not true at all. Watch any of these major segments on conservative media, or watch the conservative pundits and see it's just pure rhetoric. Even if you agree with the substance of the argument that they're saying, the rhetoric they use is nuts. It's fucking nuts.
That's not
face
okay.
with dots on our neck. So how are you to
Who's
say?
they though? Like random unhinged people? Do you think unhinged
Random
people exist
unhinged
on both
leftists.
sides?
Random unhinged
Do you think
leftists.
unhinged right-wing supporters exist or no?
Absolutely, I think there's some on both
Because-
sides, but that's why I'm saying you can't say forcible suppression of the opposition is tagged only onto Trump, because that's coming from the left side as well.
Okay.
Wow, that's a dumb argument. That's a really dumb argument. One, nothing about the putting out of tasteless Charlie Kirk memes or tasteless leftist memes or whatever. Nothing about that necessarily suppresses oppositional things. Again, you're thinking purely in cultural things. He's talking about governmental suppression. It's different when some 16-year-old edgelord posts some meme that says Chicago is a leftist hellhole, and the president of the United States, with power and authority, posts that meme and then also does policy decisions that reinforce that meme. That's different.
Okay, let me ask you then. I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Scotty. When Donald Trump sent a True Social post with 3 names in the post, and 2 of those names have been indicted over the past month, is there any analog to the Biden administration sending out open posts to the Attorney General Merrick Garland and asking people to be indicted?
I honestly am not completely knowledgeable on what exactly.
Okay,
you're
so
talking
Donald
about.
Trump has spent the past 9 months in office trying to consolidate power among every single institution, not just by appointing loyalists, but by trying to target law firms that are Democratic, universities. Act Blue, which is the main fundraising pack for the Democratic Party, has recently been they're investigating, trying to sue them because they want to take down any mechanism that helps the Democratic Party.
So let's talk about universities.
So I think this is one of the biggest problems, is that the majority of these people are desperately ignorant about the things they want to talk about. They only saw the TikTok thing or whatever. And again, she just doesn't know because her feed simply doesn't give it to her. Her algorithmic feed, her social media simply does not ever mention the dozens and dozens and dozens of instances that absolutely prove this point. So she's just like, well, hold on, that doesn't make any sense. So now she wants to talk about universities, because universities she has seen on her feed, and universities are very biased towards conservatives. I'm pretty sure they're really biased towards conservatives. And again, it's just like you literally are selectively being fed information, true and not true information, and you just don't get it.
Wait, is that forcibly suppressing the opposition party when you're trying to...
I don't know if I'd exactly say forcible suppression. It depends on exactly how you're saying it. Because, like we were saying, when you're attaching the term fascist, you're talking about Nazis. You're talking about specifically Nazis. And with
again, this is just because you're ignorant and don't understand anything doesn't mean everyone else has the same level of ignorance of you. And even so, again, the things he's doing are early Weimar their early fucking rise of Hitler and his fascist party and the Nazi party. These are things that they did early on, before they got into power or as they're getting into power. This is absolutely shit that they were doing.
when they say oppression,
Not just Nazis.
I'm saying specifically for what I'm saying. The suppression of the opposition, when they're calling Trump Hitler, they're calling conservatives.
Who's they? J.D. Vance?
I'm sorry, leftist. When the leftists...
Which leftist politician? Can you name one?
I think you're moving the goalpost here.
Wait, no. Can you name one leftist politician who has called Trump Hitler?
It's every single... It's like...
So you shouldn't be throwing this out when no leftist politicians have actually called Trump Hitler.
And you're throwing out the term fascism.
Is saying that an election was stolen when it wasn't fascism? Wait, do you think the 2020 election was stolen?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know because I'm not
honestly,
empowered to
this
find
proves
that
my
out.
point. Trump is causing a rise of fascism in our generation. I would never say that you're a fascist, but I think there is a normalization of an ideology where people are denying elections.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know if the 2020 election was stolen. This isn't America. The 2020 election was not stolen.
You've been eliminated by the majority. Could you please return?
Thank you.
to
That was
the
great.
seat?
Yeah. Nobody wants... Honestly, I don't think a lot of people want to take on this particular topic because they kind of know, like, the only defense is to say it's not fascistic and it's a definitional thing, because they don't want to talk about it, because the more you talk about it, the more Trump looks terrible. Because he looks awful. Excuse me, I'm burping here. Yeah, let me grab a quick little drink of water. There we go. But again, like, they don't have a definition of fascism. All they can do is some kind of half-ass whataboutism, and, you know, fascism is Nazism, and because he hasn't hit that level yet, calling him a fascist is bad. But that's a really piss-poor fucking argument, because it just shows, like, okay, you're just using an incredibly limited perspective of what fascism is to defend this. And even then, okay, if he's not fascism, one, I'm saying he's causing the rise of fascism by doing fascistic action, so I don't even need to say he's a fascist. I'm simply saying he is encouraging things that we saw early on. Honestly, that would be a kind of an argumentative thing. Maybe, I'm not sure how well-researched Adam Mockler is on the early rise of fascism and some of their actions. But again, historically, like, you absolutely there are plenty of, again, my history on this particular area is a little bit fuzzy. I was mostly American history. 19th 20th century American history. It was kind of my specific field that I did for undergrad and whatnot. But there was absolutely tons of instances that were like this. They're all the warning signs. They're all the warning actions that we know come from this.
So you keep saying Trump is a fascist and just keep throwing that term around.
I didn't say that. I said he's causing a rise of fascism in our generation. I would consider him a fascist, though. Yeah.
He's not a fascist because a fascist is one party rule. There's two parties in the United States. It's not one party, and he's not used.
So, again, fascism is one party. Again, you're looking at the end part there. You can absolutely have a fascistic party that is trying to make it a one party rule. That's how this works. Jesus.
Using violence to control power. It's not like.
Again, you have a very limited understanding of also violence. Is that you can have violence, again, the literal, specific, material violence, but you can also have language violence. I mean, hell, half of what that lady was just talking about, and also what you seem to be disliking, is the harm that is caused, we could say, even by the violent language of calling him a fascist. You are upset by the harm being caused by this because you know it could cause material harm to Trump. So if that's true, then the things that Trump says, if they are, or the right says, could have potentially the same levels of harm. So again, you could have violence suppression in many ways.
After 2028, you're never going to see Trump again. His 2-term limit is over. That's not fascism.
That's one stupid. Because you can have oftentimes a yes, they will stick around for a while, but eventually the leader will die. Like, fascism doesn't require the one leader to always be in rule. It's often focused around a particular leader, and that leader will often hold power for a while. But honestly, this is why kind of fascism falls apart, because it does try to only hold to that one thing, and they don't let go of power. But it technically, you could have a fascistic style government where you have one charismatic leader, and then he basically gives over his power like a king to the next, charismatic leader that he has chosen, his successor. And also, Donald Trump did not, one thing that fascists do, if they fall out of power, and it's not a violent fall out of power, like they lose democratically, the fascist party, often is, there's an election and the fascist party loses. The fascist party basically every single time, and you could look this up in the few cases where it has been a peaceful transition from fascism to a more democratic rule, the fascist party, or fascist to a different fascist party that is oppositional to them, the losing party always says the election is stolen, rigged, wasn't legitimate, it's bullshit. They almost always, around the election time, around the time of the transition power, try to steal it, try to resist it. They try a coup, they try various elements like that. Donald Trump did exactly that when he lost in 2020. The fake elector scheme, the riot, the encouraged riot, and a kind of invasion of the Capitol, his deliberately incisive rhetoric, and his actions all around before and after. That's all Fascism Playbook 101. When the fascists lose in a democratic election, that's what they do. Every single time. So this idea, this argument that he's trying to structure here, the weakness of this particular argument is that, after 2028, he's not going to be around anymore because, he's at his 2-term limit. Trump has already said, and many people around Trump specifically, including former advisors and current advisors, people who are very supportive of him, have absolutely already made arguments and brought into suggestion the idea of eliminating, what is it, the 25th Amendment, which, or the 28th or something like that. It's the one that has specifically the 2-term limit on presidents. He's already done that, and Trump has already made, I think, a couple of tweets and a couple of comments about, he basically said, well, I'm not really sure if I would do that. I'm not sure if we could do that. I would have to take a look into that. I'd have to look into whether that could be done, which is not the answer you have. The answer is no, of course not. Why would you even be asking me if I'm going to run for a 3rd term? I literally can't. That's a stupid question. Next. Now, Trump doesn't say that. Trump says, well, we'd have to take a look at that. I don't know about that. Because, again, that's always his response to anything that he knows is explicitly illegal, but he probably plans on trying. So, again, this is nonsensical.
If you want to see fascism, go to the Middle East. I'm Egyptian. If you want to see fascism, I can show you what fascism is. When
those aren't technically fascistic. There are some degrees of dictatorship. Again, you could see some fascism in there. But again, just pointing to something that's a worse form of the thing. It's kind of like this. No, this isn't a cat. This house cat in front of you. This cat. I'll show you a cat. And he points to a tiger. It's like this. Yes, the tiger is a cat. It's a very big cat. It's a very cat-like cat. But that's the little tabby in front of you is still a fucking cat. Just because it's a bigger cat does not mean it's not a cat.
when the president...
Okay, you said fascism is one-party control.
Yes.
Donald Trump has spent the past decade acting like the opposition party shouldn't exist. Caroline Leavitt just the other day said the entire Democratic voter base is Hamas terrorists, criminals, and illegal immigrants. Stephen Miller says the Democratic Party is not a party, it is a domestic extremist organization. Donald Trump, wait, listen, Donald Trump has called my side Nats, the enemy within, and people who need to be taken care of. He's tried to get the military to boo Obama and liberals. So Donald Trump over the past decade does not want the Democratic Party to exist. That's why they're targeting Act Blue.
So you're
That's why they're targeting our fundraising
telling me that
mechanisms.
he doesn't have the right to criticize the Democratic Party at all?
That's not criticizing the party. That's using your power to take down their fundraising mechanism.
That's, again, it's criticism. Again, the problem is that because they are so inundated with conservative media, they don't realize that there's a difference between, like, again, the bar is so low as far as basic decorum that they don't understand the difference between criticism and directly calling for her violence or complete delegitimization of this. This isn't criticizing. This is literally saying the other person shouldn't exist. That's the problem.
Democratic Party, they tried to impeach him twice. And also, isn't that fascism? Why are you trying to...
Wait.
Again, impeachment isn't fascism. Again, removing a leader from power is not fascism. Installing and otherwise refusing power to the other parties, and again, that senior thing, that may be fascistic. But again, impeaching a president because using the lawful powers given to the Congress and Senate to impeach a president for unpresidential behaviors and unlawful behaviors is not that's not even close. In fact, that's the opposite of fascism, because again, the power is given to Congress, not to a specific party. The Democrats don't have the unilateral power to impeach somebody. Just like, again, Republicans didn't when they impeached Bill Clinton. Or the Democrats didn't, and the Democrats and Republicans didn't when they impeached Richard Nixon. Again, this is just instinctual, my guy being attacked kind of feelings.
Wait, hold up. Hold up. You think it's fascism to go through the...
He wasn't acquitted. I don't think they acquit. They simply did not find standing for that. And again, that's mostly because, again, conservatives are lockstep because they're a fascistic party. That's what fascist parties do, is they are lockstep behind their charismatic leader, and they will not vote to impeach ever. Doesn't matter what he did.
proper
No,
processes
you know-
to
you know, I
impeach
think
somebody.
what is
Wait a minute.
When one party controls the narrative, when you had Twitter, you got
Wait a
all
minute.
that- you got all the
Just
social
go back
medias.
1 second.
No, no.
Impeaching somebody is not fascism. Impeaching somebody is
Yes,
going
but
through the proper
deliberately
processes.
making a false narrative around him.
at
That's
the-
what they did.
Oh, if you want
That's
to talk
what
about
they did.
false narratives,
No, they
let's
did
talk
a
about
false
the 2020
narrative.
election because
Habibi,
you
listen,
came
listen.
in here. Listen,
Listen,
you
calm
came in
down,
here.
calm down. Like, take a deep breath. اهدى شوية.
Okay, so fuck this guy immediately. I would immediately tell him to fuck off and get out of here. I would not talk to him. That kind of weird condescension where you rattle off like a fucking cokehead a bunch of random emotional bullshit, and then I'm speaking. If I were speaking quickly to like, hey, look, I'm trying to get a point in here, but you keep interrupting me. I keep trying to answer or directly talk about these things, and then this whole Habibi thing, Habibi, you know, like, hey, my friend, let's no, we're not friends. You keep that shit to yourself, you fucking cunt. Sorry, I get super irritable with this kind of behavior.
اهدى شوية, okay? Let me tell you, okay? When you have
Let me
one
tell you.
party,
Tell you
I'm
what.
mad at terrible talking points. I'm so sorry.
Listen. You know, you take a deep breath. So when you have a party, one party controlling the narrative on social media, and they were telling.
Again, it wasn't. Like, and it also, this just feels also that that other kind of whining, you know, this entitlement to being loved. You can't, you have to love me. The liberals, they have to love me. They can't criticize me. They can't make fun of me. They can't be mean to me on their media platforms. Like, I'm sorry. I don't see a single goddamn light decency on Truth Social or anything like that when it comes to Democrats ever. It's fucking abhorrent. And again, a big part of this is, look, one, it's criticism, and two, they would stop saying terrible things about you if you would stop doing terrible things. It's pretty easy.
When there was pre-COVID.
Wait, who owns Twitter right now? Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, but
Who
that's
just bought
free.
TikTok? Right wingers. Who owns Facebook? Mark Zuckerberg. And
Okay,
Meta.
but they
So
switched
what
the
do you
narrative.
mean?
They switched narrative based on who's in power.
But then it's not leftists. That's a separate thing. There might be a third party of capitalists or kind of whatever who are just using whatever's in power to do that, so that you can't really lay that on Democrat, you dumbass.
So right now you got Trump, right? You're saying he's a fascist. Is that
If
your
Donald
claim?
Trump
What's
could
your
have-
claim? That America's going to be a fascist nation? Is that your claim?
No, my claim is that Trump is causing a rise of fascism in our generation. And you know what? Sitting in this room proves it, because you guys
No,
are all
it's
blind
not,
to the
it's not.
fact.
Because
You're
you haven't
blind
been
to
to
the
the
fact that
have
the
you been to
2020.
the Middle East?
I'm
Have you
Syrian,
been
but
to
I
the-
haven't been to the Middle East. No.
Okay, have you been to this? Have you seen fascism in Syria when they're killing Christians just because of their faith?
I mean,
that's fascism.
Someone
That's
just,
fascism.
someone
When you
just
kill
claimed.
people.
Listen,
Is he Trump killing
someone
anyone?
just claimed that fascism can only mean Hitler or Mussolini. So now there's
No,
a
I'm
broader
saying-
definition.
no,
now
no,
you
no,
guys
no.
understand this.
No, no.
Okay, thank you. Thank God you guys understand it.
It means
Okay, wait.
fascism is attributed to those people because they killed people. They kill people. Trump is not killing
Fascism
anyone.
doesn't just mean you kill
Yes,
people.
it's one party signing everyone off, and they're trying to control
Do you
the
think if
whole
Donald
population.
Trump had it? Do you think if Donald Trump and Stephen Miller had it their way, they would let the Democratic Party exist, or do you think they would go after opponents, fundraising mechanisms, et cetera, et cetera? Which one?
No, what Trump is doing
Boss,
is
you've been eliminated by the group. You may return to the seat.
Thanks, AB.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Oh.
Nice to meet you,
Nice to meet you, Adam. Ethan.
Ethan.
So I want to get started with talking about how you're saying sitting in this room with all of us who are blind to the truth or whatever is proving your point about the rise of fascism. It seems that you are doing exactly what people have been saying and applying this label needlessly to so many conservatives, like painting with a broad brush.
He didn't
And
call you
it
fascists.
makes me wonder if you really use fascism in the
He, again, this is reading comprehension and listening comprehension problems, and honestly, as again somebody who taught literature for a while in college, this is actually a major issue. Is media literacy, language literacy, whether it's reading, writing, or even just speaking and listening, is so terrible amongst the average American, the youth especially, but again, across the board, people read at a 5th grade level or there or less or about there. This is one of the biggest problems, is that I think he genuinely thinks that Adam just said they were all fascists, but he didn't. To make sure you understand this, again, he didn't say you were fascist. He said, listening around you, this is part of the problem, is that you guys don't understand what fascism is, and your response to these things kind of indicates the problem of this rising fascism, what you're responding to, how you're responding to this. He's not saying he's just fascist. He's not even saying you're rising fascist. He's saying that the fact that he's creating this fascistic narrative is blinding you. That's what fascism partly does, is that it gets people on its side by presenting a false narrative of what's happening. He didn't really call you fascists.
Way in like how the word means, or if you're using it as like a manipulation technique to silence opposition.
My intention is never ever to paint an entire party as fascist or anyone in this room as fascist. I don't think anyone is. But I think that there is a blindness and there is a normalization of fascism. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Was the 2020 election stolen or was it not? Was it legit?
I'm not sure, but can I ask you a question?
No, that scares me. Listen,
do you think elections can be stolen?
Let me finish my point.
Do you think it's impossible for elections to be stolen?
Of course, but in the United States, Donald Trump then took 60 court cases, 60 cases of election fraud. He lost every single one.
So he went through the courts legally?
After he went through the courts legally, what he did is that didn't work. So then he called election officials, Brad Raffensperger.
So we're going to take a quick little break here. I have to use the bathroom, but an interesting little point there is that what they don't understand is just like, he uses the courts legally. Well, one, he had no cause for this. So again, capricious or there's a word that's kind of going for me, but this cavalier, I'll just sue them and sue these things based on fraud, saying that there was fraud when there isn't. That is reckless behavior. If you don't have evidence of fraud, and he did not have evidence of fraud, he had a desire that there was fraud so that he could remain as president, brought all these court cases despite there being no evidence. He lost all of those court cases oftentimes due to standing or just sheer lack of evidence. And the only evidence that we end up finding is usually evidence that actually worked in his favor, as far as people deliberately trying to steal the election or steal the election for Donald Trump. Again, there wasn't much of anything. So based on those court cases, the fact that 60 of them, like most of them, were dismissed and failed on standing of lack of evidence should suggest that the election was incredibly safe, or as safe and as true and not stolen as any election we can think of in recent memory. So the fact that people are still saying, I don't know, that's the issue, is that this shouldn't be a question. Maybe you, honestly, I wouldn't even say you should be able to say that the question is, the question shouldn't be even, hold on. My YouTube stream crashed. Maybe it did. I don't know. It looks like it crashed on my end. Hold on. Something's wonky here. My monitor here is policy violations. Was I streaming under the wrong category? Maybe I was streaming under the wrong category. Oh, that's a problem. We detected the video belonged to somebody else. Well, yeah, I'm watching and reacting to it. Oh, well, that's annoying. Oh, well. I guess YouTube is gone. Huh. Again, we're reacting to it. Do I need it to make it smaller? I'm discussing this and... Huh. Well, I guess... Or are we back? Maybe we're back. Maybe we're not. That's weird. Again, I let it play for literally like 10 seconds and YouTube is getting very, very restrictive on their automated monitoring for reactions. This is why, honestly, I don't do a ton of reactive content anyway. So if you guys who might be watching on YouTube, you might want to switch over to Twitch. Not saying YouTube is not a good platform to do so on, and I am not advocating against YouTube as a platform. But if there is any interruptions, you may want to find somewhere else. It's possible. But all right. Well, I mean, we'll just have to deal with it. I don't know if it will come on and off or not. But anyway, the fact that it is a question, this is the harm, is that he created, based on no evidence, doubt. And more importantly, it's not a doubt, is that even though it's a doubt, like he could say, oh, well, I'm not sure. The thing is that the reason he's not sure, and why he will say that, is that he likes the idea of the uncertainty because it allows him to ignore, 1, wrongdoing of Trump, 2, wrongdoing of trying to steal the election, and 3, it allows him to pretend that there was a victimization that justifies any action. So even if you do say it's wrongdoing, the idea that he doesn't know if it was stolen or not, that means that it could go both ways. It could be stolen, it could not be stolen. Again, he thinks it's stolen when he wants to justify, emotionally he thinks it's stolen when he wants to justify Trump's actions. And when people point out Trump's actions as wrong or whatever, he can say, well, I mean, nothing came of it, and I guess maybe it wasn't so. I don't know. Like, he just goes back into that. It's that vague answer. It's the fact that you don't have to commit to anything. And again, he uses like, well, there's, are you saying that no election could be stolen? Which again is going back to well, how do you know that there isn't a floating spaghetti monster around the earth? Have you looked at all of the sky? There could be a floating spaghetti monster that floats around, Earth, that revolves around it, rotates with us. You never know. There could be one that's hidden on the dark side of the moon. You don't know. There's just like this look that, again, you're the, there's like this weird absence of evidence, or you're trying to prove a negative, which just isn't going to work. And they know this. And this is partly because, again, I honestly don't think a lot of these kids, especially some of them, like this guy, I know he's a political pundit. I think he's even a friend of like Nick Fuentes, or some of them are friends with Nick Fuentes. They're their own little TikTokers kind of bullshit. They do this as a career. But I think some of these who are not quite as big TikTokers or whatever, or less, I think they're genuine. They're genuinely stupid. They're generally ignorant of a lot of things. They lack the critical thinking skills to actually be able to parse out and understand and detail and see the systems as they are and kind of figure out how this is all working. They lack that ability, and because they do, they genuinely cannot figure out what is happening.
From Georgia, have you heard this phone call?
I have, yeah.
He said, can you find me 11,000 votes? After that didn't work, he tried a fake...
I think you're speculating a lot on what he meant on that phone call.
Okay, but then after...
Again, he didn't mean that. Well, I'm sorry. Words have consequences, even if you don't mean. Do you think that everybody who criticized Kirk before he died, do you think that they are culpable for the negativity that surrounded him that may have led to his death? They would say, yes, the violent rhetoric of the left is helped cause and create the scenario that had Kirk killed. Well, if you hold that standard to be true, then all of the election denialism, all of the Capitol riots, all of this stuff can be laid at Donald Trump's rhetoric's feet. You can't have it both ways if you are principled. If you are privileged, you can, because privilege is just you being an asshole.
After that, he tried a fake elector scheme. You've heard of this, right? He tried to gather fake electors in 7 states.
he has almost certainly not heard of the fake elector scheme, because the majority of people have not heard about the fake elector scheme. And again, if they have only gone, I don't know what a fake elector scheme is. Fox News, tell me what it is. And Fox News in a 30-second segment said, it's stupid and silly, and JFK did it before and they didn't have a problem with it. And there was like this thing in Hawaii. All you need to know is it's just bullshit. And they go, thank you, Fox News. And then they walk away. That's the level of discourse we're at. So I guess you can't react to the Mockler thing. Is it too quick? I wonder, hold on, let me check something real quick here. I'm going to need to do it on here. Maybe I need to put age restriction on this content. Maybe I'm cursing too much. That could be it. Actually, I'm wondering. I know I'm probably in the wrong category. I am in the wrong category. That might be a big problem. All right, so let's change that to news and politics. My apologies. No, it's not made for kids. No. Tell you what. I don't think it should be. I'm not sure if cursing is going to make it. Yes, restrict this video to 18 years or older. No. Save that. Let's see if that fixes it, because it keeps blocking it, and I think it might be because of some of the content there, but we'll have to see.
It's to override the real electors. After that didn't work. January 6th happened. I know everyone's going to sigh at this, but do you know what was happening inside the Capitol on January 6th?
What was happening?
Well, do you know?
All right, so the fake elector thing should not ever be dropped, because it is probably the actual like people point to January 6th as being the big problem, because again, there was a death, there was rioting, there was deaths and violence and all that kind of stuff, and it is really bad and very, very bombastic. But as far as like fascistic kind of underhanded crazy shit, the fake electors scheme is way more malicious and deliberate. You might say, well, he didn't intend on X, Y, and Z happening on January 6th. Sure. The problem is that if you look at the fake elector things, like, okay, there's no way he didn't intend on these things being a problem. All right, so I think we're going to just have problems with the YouTube, so we're just going to go ahead and stop the YouTube stream. My apologies, guys. If you want to come, you'll see me over at Twitch, but we'll go ahead and stop this.